Great, let's start. A very warm welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the first of our Women-Led Wonder series. This series of events is really close to my heart because I wanted to give all of the incredible women in our community, particularly our business members like Stella, an opportunity and a platform to really share their stories. And so today we are going to be talking to Stella about her journey, some of the challenges that she's faced, how she has weathered the COVID storm, and also giving you some time and an opportunity to ask questions. If you do have questions as we go along, feel free to pop them in the chat. I'll keep an eye on the chat, and if it's something that's relevant to what we're chatting about at the time, then I'll ask you a question. But otherwise, we will have some time at the end for a Q&A and for Stella to answer your questions. And if you want to obviously have a chat with Stella afterwards separately, there'll be a follow-up email where I'll include her details as well as any information on her business so that you can engage with her separately. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. I think without further ado, Stella, I would like to hand over to you. Perhaps you can tell us more about More Life Adventures and what your business does in your own words.
Yeah. First of all, it's great to be here. Thank you for this hour. I really, really value it. So More Life Adventures really started out to do fitness retreats, which were basically, coaching by some of the best coaches that I know in beautiful locations. And I started out in Crete. But what it has shown me over the short phase that I've been in operation is that they are actually a lot more than fitness retreats. They're sort of like a self-development thing for people. So people come and, everyone's on a journey and everyone needs a break from their routine, and people get a little bit of time to put into themselves and to reflect and to connect and to learn new things. And suddenly they get this breath of fresh air, and it sort of leads them to further changes down the line. So they come back home and they change, another 3 things that they didn't think they would be changing. So essentially it's fitness retreats, but I'm glad to say that it's developed into a whole sort of more of a holistic retreat, if that we can discuss that. Oh, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry, I had to do that in case my dog was barking. It's the joys of working at home. You've had quite a varied career path, Stella. You've done quite a few different things and worn many hats, which certainly I can identify with. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to this point? How you came to start More Life Adventures?
Yeah, when I was 16, I thought I wanted to be an anthropologist. And then I didn't have the guts to pursue it. So I went into architecture, I come from a construction family. And that was I didn't give my gut enough credit. So I did architecture, which was a very long degree. And then I worked in it for 8 years. And when you don't listen to your gut starts protesting. So I had a lot of gut issues, a lot of health issues, a lot of basically every 3 months I was burning out emotionally and physically, and my body was protesting and I was sort of semi-depressed, and I would do things. Architecture is a brilliant career for many people. It just wasn't my thing. And I would work obviously during the day, and then in the evening I would find other things to restore humanity. Like I'd volunteer and I'd learn languages and I'd go and do fitness. And eventually at 27 it was a lot late. Sorry. Eventually, I think early 30s, I gave myself permission to quit. And it took a long time because, you're earning good money and you've invested a long time in your studies and in your career, blah, 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 and you're on a career path. But eventually I said, you know what, I'm just going to take a sabbatical. And then I used that time to volunteer and to work for a charity. And in that time, I gave myself some space to pursue my dream. And I did a certificate in like a personal training certificate, and I started doing personal training. And I loved it. I absolutely loved the one-on-one coaching. There is a coach in me, and I also I think city people are starved of movement, really, like just just variety of movement. You know, we sit for a long time and we don't get a lot of opportunities to roam and to be in the water, or, you know. So I absolutely loved everything about personal training, except the sort of, again, the corporate structure of it. And I found myself basically having another corporate career in personal training. You know, like we were in a basement gym, we were working all the hours, and my clients were also pretty on the verge of burnout all the time. And I realized one day, you know, one of my clients went on holiday, and she'd been wanting to lose weight for some time. And we were doing, you know, her diet was, we were always talking about, you know, what to eat and how to dial in her diet. And she went on holiday for a week and came back significantly leaner. And I said, you know, tell me, what did you do? She said, I did nothing different. And she literally had spent a week sleeping enough. And that sort of lit a light bulb in my head of, you know, what people actually need is some time off of this hamster wheel to just do the very basics, you know, sleep enough, get some sunlight, have some time with friends, basically de-stress. So that was like an eye-opening moment of actually, I am a personal trainer and our lifestyle isn't healthy. You know, this basement lifestyle of like work all the hours, go home, watch Netflix, sleep, and do it all over again the next day. As much as I would like to say it's healthy because I move and I train people, it just wasn't, it didn't have the basics. So I thought, you know what, I know what to do. I'm going to set up this little retreat business. And every so often I'm going to take my clients to the sun and train them in the sun and give them enough time to sleep and reflect and all that. And that's how it started. And eventually, you know, some of my clients came, but a lot of other people came as well. So is that
yeah, no, and well, actually I would like to take it a step back, because I think you mentioned something about when you were talking about taking your sabbatical. And you know, I think often in our career pods or our career journeys, things like that sound quite romantic. You know, like you sort of say, oh, well, I've decided I'm going to change my career. But there's obviously a lot of stress and anxiety that underpins those decisions. And I know that when we were chatting yesterday, you told me that you actually rented out your bedroom and slept on the sofa when you decided to do that.
Yeah.
So it came because, you know, those are the kind of real life considerations. So how will I pay my bills? How will, you know, I feed my family or carry on with a fraction of the lifestyle that I was used to, but still make a meaningful change?
Yeah.
Was that a scary time for you in terms of making that decision? Because you mentioned as well, giving yourself permission to make the change. So you got halfway there, but was there a, you know, a fear around, what if I do this and I don't feel any better?
Yeah, definitely. I think there were some basic things I had in place. I had good friends who were brutally honest with me, and they repeatedly said to me, you have no life. And one of them famously for me, said to me, you need more life. And that's why I called it More Life Adventures, because I had no life. And that from her, that was very humbling. You know, she had everything in a way. She had like, she was married, she had a career, she had a mortgage, blah, 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 all the things that we associate with sort of growing up. And she said to me, you have no life. And I felt really humbled, and I trusted her, and I thought there's something in her words. You know, you can't just be grinding. That's not a life. And that was back in architecture. The other thing was I'd burn out so many times, Michelle, and I was tired of being, you know, feeling less than, you know, feeling like I was operating at 40%. And then I had money, but I was spending it on stuff to make me feel better. And I think we underestimate how much we can cut back if we're happy. If we're genuinely happy, we can live on very little. That's my experience. You know, when I wasn't happy, I needed, you know, expensive dresses. But the minute I sort of started doing what I loved, I was like, I could just be in a tracksuit all day. And it doesn't matter that I've worn this tracksuit for like the past 7 years because I'm happy. Does that answer? And yes, I rented out my bedroom. I lived in the living room rather than it was slightly better than what you described. But I ended up having these 2 flatmates rather than 1 flatmate. And it was one of the best times. Like, we had great banter. I think, I was definitely up for a different kind of life. But it was humbling to go to parties and people would ask me, what do you do? And I went from, oh, I'm an architect and you sound very interesting, to like, I'm not doing a lot, finding myself, or I've taken a sabbatical. It sounds like, what are you doing with your life?
That, I think, depends on your definition of success. And I think the way, particularly what's happened with COVID, it's forced all of us to recalibrate what success and health and happiness means. I think over this year, a lot of people have had to go back to basics and really think about what is important. And I think we'll see lots of new businesses coming out of this period where people have had time at home with their families. And yes, it's been very challenging, or they've just had more space because they haven't had to commute for an hour, each way, each day. So we've carved out more space in our lives. And I think that brings about a sort of time to contemplate happiness, success, and really what's important.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that does answer the question. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I mean, in terms of challenges, because obviously, going from what you decided to do and setting up the business where you were sort of carried by this momentum of people that clearly needed what you were offering. Can you highlight some of the challenges that you have been associated with you starting a business? Because that's there is challenge and fear in each of those steps, and finally taking the plunge.
Yeah, I mean, I did it backwards. I did a seminar on retreats, because you can't study retreats at university. So I was like trying to get on every course that I could. And this lady was quite rightly saying, try doing one in the vicinity of where you are and see, test out your idea, and then go venture out a bit further, and then a bit further. And then eventually when you're successful and you've got something that you can roll out, then you can go abroad. And I started abroad because I thought it would be in my head, because I have a house in Crete, because it's my mum's house. I'm Greek and she grew up there. And I thought this will be the easiest place to start, but actually it wasn't, because it involved essentially doing business in another country when I hadn't even started a business. I set up the business here, but I started doing business in another country, and that brings complications. I had to basically let go of my clients, of my personal training clients, and move out there for 3 months, which was super isolating. That was the first thing. I would say, if I was doing it all from the beginning now, I would start in Surrey or somewhere local. But we'll get to that. I eventually, I ended up coming back. But yeah, that was number one challenge, being a little bit isolated and not really knowing perhaps what to prioritize. But I very much believe now in learning learning what you need to learn, rather than, I did a 7-year-long course that I ended up, I'm not using it anymore. So I think if you are open, give yourself a little bit of budget for learning, or rather a lot of budget for learning, because you will need to get on courses and find what you need to learn.
What about the importance of community? I mean, that's, I guess, again, at this time, certainly I've seen this from the different conversations I've had with women in our community, how important their not their followers, their actual community, their customers, their clients, their supply chain, has that been really important for your journey, and to make sure that you keep allocating time to build that?
Yeah, 100%. I actually very much underestimated that. I was very much like a lone solopreneur at the beginning, but COVID has helped in really reaching out, asking for help, and also really taking time to talk to people and just having conversations, from casual to business, to, 100% business conversations. But I will say I got so much help from people that I knew through the gym in the beginning, to then suppliers, to then, every conversation that you spend money on is worth it. At the end of the day, we are all a network. Your network is everything.
Yeah, and I think, certainly it sounds like you've done this. You've built your business and kind of moved it in the direction of what your customers and your clients are telling you that they want. And I think that's something that so many people, we just have our heads down working so hard that we don't actually listen to what our community want. Essentially, they are the ones that will be procuring your service or your product, and I think that's been what's come out of this time now, that a lot of people who've pivoted their businesses, and I know that you've had to do that as well, have said that, really actually being vulnerable and saying to their customers and their clients, what do you want? How can I help you? What can I do for you? And that shaped their new offering or the new direction that their business has taken.
Yeah, I think I will say I very much started out of hiring my friends, selling to my friends. And that's not necessarily, everyone starts there, but, at some point you've got to grow up and be, oh, well, there's a whole world out there that I should be talking to. And that's taken a leap of faith and a little bit of a nudge for me to do. During COVID was the best time to reach out. I think I found that because, I sort of stopped working for a while completely and thought, what do I do now? I've just given up my PT business, given up all my clients to other people. And I said I would focus on events, and now COVID is here and I can't do events. So what do I do? So I had a sort of like the 5 stages of grief for a while. And then I realized everyone was networking on webinars and on Instagram and on all the channels. And that's what I did. And I met some incredible people. We connected. I spent some time, meeting people in your network. And that's been fantastic. I must say it's been, the silver lining of COVID. I think finding what you said about finding what people are really needing is not as easy as I would like it to be. You've really got to be bold and, cast, and market really. Before having this business, I couldn't sell anything to anybody. Maybe I could, but I think my boldness I've grown in boldness in saying, I believe in this and I think you should take a look.
Well, but often it's the passion sells the product, isn't it? Or sells the experience, because if you live and breathe your purpose, I think that comes quite naturally. And so I think selling is certainly something that most entrepreneurs are afraid of. And you hear it so often. People say, oh, I've got, this is what I do, but I can't sell it. I need to hire people to do that for me.
Yeah.
So I don't think you're alone in that, and I'm sure that there are other people on the call today that would agree with that. When, in terms of challenge or navigating challenge, do you kind of have a toolkit of how you deal with things? How do you for yourself navigate a challenge when you're sitting on something and you don't know what to do?
Yeah, I write things down. I write my thoughts down and my feelings down, and it's like my form of therapy, what to just really get honest with myself. Like, how do I feel? What am I scared of? And then I ask myself 2 questions. If I wasn't fearing, what would I be doing? And what is the one thing that I could do right now that would move the needle the most? But the starting point is just writing things down, writing down how I feel, and leaning into that uncomfortable place of, it's usually fear or some sort of discomfort.
Yeah. I think those are good questions. I need to have those up on my notice board, I think. So they are, what if you weren't afraid, what would you be doing right now? And what's the one thing you can do to move the needle or change the situation?
because every day, you know, we wake up and there's a massive to-do list, and there are different ways of going about things. And when you have to figure out the way, I find that's a good question to, you know, what's the one thing I could do right now that could change things in a big way?
Yeah. What about boundaries? I know you've told me in the past that that's really important for you, you know, in terms of the way that you work. Tell us a bit about that, setting boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, there's boundaries around what my working hours will be, how much downtime I need. I found, you know, sometimes working at the weekends was very productive, but it was a killer. Like, it would wipe me out the week after. I also, you know, when you haven't quite tested your product, so you just say yes to everyone. I was that person. You know, yes, I'll give you this discount. Yes, I can do that for you. Yes, I can do that for you. And that backfired in the sense that I hadn't been very clear with certain suppliers, and they didn't quite understand what they needed to be delivering. So I then started writing things, you know, putting contracts together and saying, you know, this is what you will deliver, this is what I will deliver. And sometimes when the relationships start out as friendships as well, or, you know, when you sort of were maybe perhaps not friends, but someone was an acquaintance and then you hire them to do a job, it's a little bit trickier to then put a contract in place in that relationship. But I found those are the saving mechanisms that will help you maintain that relationship in the long run. You know, maybe it's dry for now to sort of show someone a contract that they need to sign, but it will save you in the long run.
Difficult conversations. Yeah. Well, it's interesting actually, because we've done a couple of legal masterclasses over the last few months, and consistently that's one of the questions that comes up from entrepreneurs is the contracting piece. And I think it's so often, you know, it's a fundamental, but it's so often one of the key elements that's overlooked. And you find yourself in a situation where you are contracted with someone, but you don't have anything in writing on paper. And yes, it can cause a lot of anxiety and result in relationships breaking down where they might not need to have.
I'll give you an easy example. Someone said that they wanted to hire, they wanted to run a retreat with me, and that they would bring, you know, this amount of people on this date. And okay, brilliant. And I didn't take a deposit because I trusted them, you know, because we were friends. And then something came up and they couldn't do it anymore. So I was left with that week of, you know, that I'd been preparing for so long, and I couldn't really pitch it to anybody else. So, you know, lost income and lost time and money and all that. And at the end of the day, things will happen. But if you've got a contract in place, you're likely to lose out less. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. Thank you, Stella. And in terms of, I know, running your business kind of going forward, because you were saying, you know, that this year's been quite pivotal in terms of changing your direction. And you shared a lovely insight with me yesterday about kind of how you were feeling around imposter syndrome. And I would love you to share that with us, because I think we're all guilty of that. But yeah, if you will tell us about kind of where you're moving the business to now in light of the COVID crisis.
I think the preface to this is that, you know, I've done a lot of, I've been in this city 24 years now, and there is city fatigue. And all these years I've craved for someone to say, Stella, come with me at the weekend. We're going to go to, you know, XYZ, to this beautiful destination. Our meals are going to be planned, and there's going to be 5 people with us. We're going to have a lot of fun. There's very limited when you're at uni. These things are planned for you. You know, you join a club or a society, and you have your weekends planned out for you. But as you get older, these opportunities are fewer and far between. And if you're single, there's even less of them. So I was always craving for someone to plan some active weekend for me. That was never happening. And that was at the back of my mind. That's the kind of thing I would want to provide for people. But I had imposter syndrome around the fact that I'm not from here, and who am I to tell the Brits where to go on holiday in Britain? That was basically it. And I thought, you know, everybody knows this place much better than I do. Turns out Actually, no, they may not. So after COVID hit and Crete was out of bounds because it was on the self-isolation list, I thought, well, I'm not going to do nothing. I'm just going to bring it over to the UK. Surely there's beautiful places we can go to and do pretty much the same things. So everything, I really believe everything you do in life, however random it is, it ends up contributing to what you do later on. At some point, it will come and help you. So I knew Weymouth through friends, and I knew Portland through architecture because a lot of stone comes from Portland. So a lot of stone that we'd specified before comes from these massive quarries on Portland Island. So I thought, let's put Portland on the map. Let's see where it is. It's sort of in the middle of the Jurassic Coast, around some beautiful locations. We're going to go to Weymouth and Portland. So I planned the whole thing around that area. And yes, people who grew up in that area were very familiar with it. Well, like, I'm not going to spend money to go back to where I grew up. But a lot of people, it was new to them, and the Jurassic Coast was unexplored. And so for them, it ended up being amazing, incredibly, well, a lot easier to organize than something in overseas. There was just a wealth of things to do. We partnered up with an amazing gym and this amazing guy who leads climbing sessions. And so all in all, like a success for me in every way. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to give myself a pat on the back and have a glass of champagne, because this is exactly what I wanted to offer. And I've offered it, and we can run this again and again. And sometimes it takes, a nudge or someone to push you, or COVID to hit, for you to do the uncomfortable things that you feel like I shouldn't really be doing it, or I'm not good enough, or I don't know enough. Those are usually lies. They're lies that keep you in the comfort zone.
They're our saboteurs.
I read a book, you guys have probably read it, but it's called The War of Art. And I read it during COVID, and it's about how we sabotage how we sabotage ourselves, exactly that. How we find distractions to keep us from doing the thing that we are meant to be doing.
Yeah, I did the happiness workshop that Rebecca Morley did for us a few weeks ago. And she talks about, I think there's 6 or 7 saboteurs, and she basically asked everyone to feedback, how, which are your saboteurs? And I was like, mine are all of them. Every single one, in some way or another, when you actually sit down and you look at it and you're honest with yourself. But it's also very liberating to be able to, admit that and go, oh, wow, yeah, I see that, because then it allows you to be kind of watch out for them in future and navigate where you could be moving forward with something as opposed to sabotaging yourself. It's really interesting.
Yeah. I do. On that point, I've done so much. I've invested in a lot of coaching during COVID because, feeling a bit lost. And so I do think, people like Rebecca, and if you can invest in a coach to point out your blind spots and to be like, you said that's what you wanted to do, so why are you not doing that thing that you said you wanted to do?
Yeah. Accountability. And I think that's another really important part of building a community, or building a community of people around you that you can really trust and be vulnerable with, is that accountability piece. And I always encourage people to, either we run a mastermind, as you know, but also to start up their own masterminds and to surround themselves with people who will hold them accountable and that they can actually contract with and say, right, this is what I want to do. And then they can keep you on the track. So, or if you've got a good reason as to why you're not doing that anymore, then they're the people that you explain that to and you use as a sounding board.
My friend Emma, who I've connected you with, she calls it your personal board, like almost as if you were a business, this is your advisory board. And I think that's such a genius term. Everybody needs their advisory board in life.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. That's really amazing. I mean, I'm interested to know, in terms of kind of any other opportunities that have arisen for you this year, in terms of your business, or maybe even personally, anything that you would like to share with us, a silver lining, I guess, because we all need to maintain our hopefulness at this.
For sure. I really, really believe in silver linings. Never waste a crisis, as they say. For me, I met, I had a lot of time on social media during the first lockdown, and I met this marketing strategist on Instagram, funnily enough, who is fantastic, and I still work with her. And I said to her, look, I'm a bit lost. I was planning on doing these events, and now I can't. I mean, I may be able to do, but I don't know when. And she said, have you thought of doing an online retreat? And I said, yes, I have, but frankly, I don't feel that I can. So when we went out to Crete eventually in August, we produced this fully, we recorded the whole thing, and we produced this online retreat. So everything that we did out there was packaged, and you can now do it. You can do it follow along from home. It's online. You can purchase it. And so that was, I would never have done that without her. And I want to thank Instagram and, the powers that be, and, our sort of, that was one of the big silver linings of COVID, that I, out of desperation and the need to reach out, I met some fantastic people that have helped me pivot. Online events are not really what my passion, because I believe in, connection and, being in person with other people in the same room. But I think there's power in them, because you can reach people in the States, you can reach people in Australia, you can reach people in other countries. And I think as much as you lose out on the physical connection and the physical side of coaching, you can, expand, you can grow in other countries. So I'm thankful for that. And I think so many things that we were doing before and we've had to change have been a great thing. I was wasting a lot of time on distracting myself, commuting, time that, I've spent looking in and sort of clarifying my life and what I should be doing, and being a little bit more honest, what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that helps.
So before we we've got two little things. So I've got one more question I wanted to ask you, and then I've got some quick questions that I'm going to ask you, so we can kind of just ramp up the energy before we hand over to questions. But what advice would you offer one of the women in the room, or women in general who are considering starting a business or making a massive career shift at the moment? What advice would you offer?
My bias here is that I was someone who was never given space to feel when I was growing up. So I really think I start off by listening to my gut. How do I feel? What does my gut say? I really believe in, at the end of the day, if you make a mistake, you can blame it on yourself. Whereas if you're listening to other people, you can't go through life blaming other people for your decisions. You've got to take responsibility. So I always say, listen to your gut. If something doesn't feel right, you're the only person who can make that decision. If you need to buy yourself some time, do you mean if someone is unhappy in their job?
Yeah, I mean, if they're considering, because I think, certainly the research shows what, the number of people who are starting businesses who've just realized over this period that either what they were doing was unfulfilling, or they've lost their jobs and there are no other jobs for them to go back to. So say, for instance, those in the hospitality industry, there've been 90,000 people that have lost their jobs in the UK.
Yeah.
Those people have to, if they're going to make a living, they need to come up with something else to do. And I think so, what advice would you give those people based on your own experience of starting a business or making a career change?
Well, first of all, I think there's nothing wrong with, we all have to downsize at some point to make those career changes. We all have to save money. And there's, as much as it's humbling, it's also a brave and bold and great thing to do, to strip out any excess or anything that you don't need. We don't need half the things we think we need, or that we end up buying when we have the money to buy. So strip out the unnecessary, just pare down your expenses to what you really need, you know, like a roof over your head, but that can be anywhere, you know, and be bold about stripping those things out and just focus on finding the thing that's going to make life exciting, the thing that you really want to contribute. And I would say, you know, I did personal training for free for a while. I did some other free fitness services for people. I would help people run. And if you're going to do it for free and you still enjoy it, then that's the thing you should be doing. So I would say test it before you sort of put a stake down and say, I'm going to do this as a business. Like, test it out, test it on friends, test it, do it for free. If you enjoy it, and if you think, give yourself a period where you're just testing. But be bold about stripping out the things you don't need. I think these can become a golden cage for us.
No, definitely. And I think that's been another thing that's come out of this last year, is from the businesses that have survived are the ones that openly say they had to go back to the drawing board and reevaluate what they were spending their money on, whether that be an office space or you know, things that they thought, or that we are led to believe, either in our personal lives or business lives, that we need to have in order to paint that, or to have that picture. You know, if you have a successful business, you should have an office space, and you should have a team of this size, and you should, you know, I think this has been a recalibration of the rules.
Yeah,
there are no rules. Your business or your model and the way that you operate is the way that you choose that's most suitable for your business. And where you can make the numbers work, I guess.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, it's great to have all the nice things, but they will be so much nicer when you end up having them because you can afford them. But if you don't have the essential of, like, I love what I do, I have this thing that is inside me and I want to bring it out into the world, then you know, I really believe, especially for women, we were put in this world to offer something. And I really want to encourage, if there's something that you need to bring, now is the time. You know, where the old business models are, you know, some of them are collapsing.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a beautiful message. If there's something you want to bring, now is the time. Thank you for that. So I've got a few quick questions, and you aren't allowed to take very long to answer these. You have to say whatever comes to your mind first, and then I'm going to hand over to everyone to see if you've got any questions. So for ladies, for those of you in the room, please do, if you've got questions, have a think. You can start popping them in the chat. Otherwise, once we've finished this, you can unmute yourself and ask the question yourself if you would like to. But so my first question is, who or what inspires you?
People who have seen death and survived. They have a really amazing perspective on life. You know, how short it is and how much potential we have. I feel like I'm always inspired by some of those people. I have one particular guy, his name's Brendan Bouchard. He nearly died at 19, and his motto is live, love, and matter. Yeah, I will. I'll send you some.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we can pop that in the follow-up. Thank you. Your biggest fear?
Jumping off from heights. Every time I've been asked to do this, it's my least favorite thing to ever do. But
you still do it, right?
No, not really. I try not to. I will if I really have to, but I try to avoid it.
Okay. And what about a guiltless pleasure?
Chocolate.
That's a good shout. And your mantra that you live by?
Find your voice and use it.
That's lovely, and that's particularly relevant for women, I think. And lastly, who is your female role model?
Yeah, I thought about this. I guess, you know, Michelle Obama is up there, but I also want to honor, you know, in The Matrix, the Oracle, there are people like that in life who are very unassuming. They're just in their kitchen making cookies, and they have some insane wisdom. And so, maybe it's your auntie, maybe it's your grandma, and they have told you things that at some point in life they come back into your head, and oh yeah, grandma said that, or like auntie said that. And I had someone like that I met in church who was so unassuming. Her English was so broken, and yet she taught me how to give people a second chance. That everyone has, to give people grace, basically. So I will never forget that.
That's beautiful. So we all need to look out for those oracles in our lives. Well, Stella, it's been so wonderful chatting to you. Thank you so much. I feel very privileged that you've shared all of this with us today. And I would love to open it up to the people in the room to ask any questions that they might have. We've got a comment here from Laura who says, I loved what you said about your experiences being relevant. What is something from your old career that has helped you have a unique perspective or a way of working in your current business?
My old career was very much about getting buildings built, delivering them. And I guess project management, which is a brilliant skill. I can't say I'm Miss Project Management, but it's definitely something when I look back and think, God, did I actually learn anything in those years? Project management is useful. And, working with a big team, being part of a big team and working with different suppliers, I guess. Otherwise, it's all well and good being solopreneur, but it's good to have some experience of being a part of a bigger team.
No, I think, and that's a question that resonates for me as well, because I've also had a very varied portfolio career. And it's interesting because I never knew it at the time. But as I've built my business, all of the things that I've done in the different corporate roles I've had have given me skills and experience that have helped me to be a better business owner. So the things, I think we should never underestimate the value of the things we learn, even if they weren't good experiences, and how they pay into making us or helping us make better decisions.
I'll tell you a couple more things now, actually. Well, Steve Jobs famously took this calligraphy course that helped him have an eye for a visual eye when it came to designing Macs and all the Apple operating system. And sometimes people underestimate, people don't know where to place you. So because I studied architecture and it was all about creating beautiful things on paper, I have a visual eye. So when it came to creating my website, someone started it out for me and I knew exactly what I wanted it to look like. Or when I create a story on Instagram, I'm very bossy when it comes to graphics because I've had this whole graphics background, and people forget, and I don't really advertise it. So when it comes to marketing, I'm like, no, it should look like this. And people are like, wow, you're bossy.
Bossy, good. You're allowed to be bossy.
Because I have a view, an angle, because I've spent years moving things around on paper until they look good,
No, that's really interesting. Laura just said, thank you, really insightful. Does anyone else have any questions? I'm going to switch the view so I can see faces of everyone.
I would love to be able to just help someone in their current situation. If anyone has a question based on where they're at and how they might move forward, if I can help one person, I'll be very happy.
Very kind, thank you. So everyone, you heard the offer.
Well, you can let me know afterwards.
Yeah. Well, I think what we'll do as part of the follow-up is I'll copy you in so that your email address is there, and if anyone wants to reach out and have a chat with you. I think what you've done, Stella, is incredible, particularly, in fact, I wrote an article for the Telegraph today around how actually it's not all doom and gloom, and women, despite us being the hardest hit by the COVID pandemic and the crisis, and it's also where it's more difficult for us to start and run businesses than it is because of access to funding, etc. But that actually there are a lot of people who are navigating this and outpacing the forecasts that they had for this year. And the industries that you're operating in, which is why I think what you're doing is so incredible, you know, the fitness industry and the travel, the combination of what you were offering was essentially both of those things. And those have been the hardest hit and where there's needed to be the most amount of innovation. So I think what you have created is really special considering that. So you can definitely give yourself a big pat on the back, because there are a lot of people.
I feel excited about travel because I never set out to be in the travel business, and I don't think I will be. But in what I'm doing, there is an element of going places, and previously was all about consuming. And I'm excited to have pivoted to, when we go somewhere, we're going to put something back to that place that wasn't there before. You know, we want to help that place leave it in better shape than we found it. And I'm excited for that, because this is our generation's responsibility to, now that we've taken as much as we wanted out of the planet, now it's time to really start putting back. So cleaning beaches, planting trees, helping the locals rebuild their business, all of those things I'm excited to do.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Stella, for your time, and a big thank you to everyone for joining us. There's some lovely comments in the group. Everyone, it seems that you were the inspiration we all needed this morning to bring in our steps.
Likewise. It's exciting. Thank you so much, Michelle, and
welcome. Great. So I'll send everyone a follow-up email with, and Stella, if there are any resources that you mentioned now, like the book or any, you know, podcasts or anything else that you would like to share with anyone that you are your go-to to keep your inspiration and motivation levels up, that would be really helpful. And I'll send those on to everyone. And everybody else, for those of you who have your cameras, I can see your smiling faces. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day. And I hope to see you at one of our Women-Led Wonder events again soon.